Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news for Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide as former Washington Husky quarterback Austin Mack following Coach DeBoer over to Tuscaloosa, committing to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Want to talk about a few things. One, Austin Mack, an extremely talented quarterback coming out of that 2023 class, what he brings to this Alabama offense, and more importantly for Alabama fans. Talking about a few massive visitors that will be on campus in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. And this is a program in Alabama that's going to be a blast to talk about the next couple of weeks as Kalen DeBoer looks to kind of continue to revamp this roster. And a lot of the news the last week since Kalen DeBoer has taken this job has been players leaving this program. I think the next couple of weeks, we're going to see what Kalen DeBoer can do in terms of getting players within this program. Really excited to kind of break it all down for you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Austin Mack. And this is a large get for some momentum for this Alabama program. Obviously, guys like Caleb Downs and Caden Proctor leaving the program. It has a lot of people questioning, can Kalen DeBoer retain his roster, recruit in the SEC? And I've been one to ask that question as well. But getting a guy like Austin Mack joining this Alabama program is kind of massive, not only, if anything, I guess you should say, for the traction of this program. Now, getting into Austin Mack, this was a very intriguing quarterback coming out of that 2023 class. Was a former five-star prospect in the 2024 cycle. He reclassifies into 2023. You take a look at him coming out of high school. I mean, over 3,400 yards throwing, 40 touchdowns to 5 interceptions his last year at the high school level. A guy that we talked about when he committed to Washington as a big frame, right? 6'6", 220 plus pounds, really good arm, but not only an arm that can drive the football and attack the deeper third, but an arm that can layer footballs. It has a lot of touch and can throw with a lot of accuracy as well. This was one of the more talented quarterbacks coming out of that 2023 class. And I think if you're an Alabama fan, you're probably most optimistic that Kalen DeBoer, one, took him out of high school, but more importantly, saw what Austin Mack did during that fall seasoning as a true freshman in 2023. Wouldn't take Austin Mack if he didn't think he had a bright future in this SEC conference. And so a guy like Austin Mack, extremely talented. You kind of trust Kalen DeBoer in his evaluation of quarterbacks here. And another very talented quarterback to add to an Alabama quarterback room that has a lot of talent to begin with. And obviously a guy like Julian Sayin coming in the 2024 class, you look at the runway for Alabama quarterback play, it's looking pretty bright. And so I think Austin Mack is a massive get in terms of kickstarting Kalen DeBoer's efforts on the recruiting trail. I want to talk about a few transfers now that we're looking at for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I want to go to a very, very good center from the Washington Huskies and Parker Brailsford, who, I mean, as a second-year kid at Washington was absolutely phenomenal, right? 612 pass blocking opportunities, only gave up 14 pressures. And although not the biggest, right, at 6'2", 280 pounds, and that 280 pounds is probably pretty close to being accurate, he was phenomenal for the Washington Huskies in that 2023 season. You go back to watching some of that film against that interior Texas defensive line in the semifinals, and I was one that thought, hey, T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, probably going to have their way with this kid. He held his own, did a phenomenal job, and was a very reliable starter for the Washington Huskies throughout that 2023 season. And what excites me the most about a guy like Parker, I mean, if you put a little bit more weight on him, get him up to 290, 295 pounds, maybe even 300, I think this is a potentially premier center at the SEC level. And another example of Kalen DeBoer knows Parker Brailsford and wouldn't have him come to Alabama if he didn't think that he could make that transition to the SEC level. This is another one for Alabama fans to certainly watch. And the last transfer I want to talk about really quick is Jabar Muhammad. And this is a kind of household name by now, was a massive part of this Washington Huskies secondary. In my mind, probably the best cornerback still available in the transfer portal. You have Oregon, you have Texas going after Jabar Muhammad, but you got to think Alabama getting him on campus will be in a pretty good spot for a guy like Jabar Muhammad, obviously with the familiarity with Kalen DeBoer and the Washington Husky connection. you talk about losing guys like Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry and Caleb Downs in the secondary. A guy like Jabar Muhammad would come in and make you feel really good about what this Alabama secondary could be in the 2024 year. This is another name certainly Alabama fans should be watching. And then you look at the high school recruiting trail as well. And a guy like Ryan Williams, who I think when Nick Saban retires, a lot of people went to look at Ryan Williams and say, I think that day he backed off his commitment to Alabama, even when there was a lot of rumors that Auburn and Texas A&M were making a push. I think a lot of people said, oh, Alabama's lost their chance with Ryan Williams. I would be surprised if that was the case. One, Ryan Williams was on campus earlier this week on an unofficial visit, coming back for an official visit this weekend. Kalen DeBoer has an easy pitch here. Like, turn on some Roma Duzne highlights and say, like, this is what we think you can do in this offense. And I think that this Alabama offense under Kalen DeBoer, who, again, you can have all the questions in terms of how he's going to be able to recruit in the SEC. I certainly have some of those questions. One thing you certainly cannot ask or question about a guy like Kalen DeBoer is what he can do on the offensive side of the football. And I think partially it's kind of why Nick Saban brought a guy like Kalen DeBoer in, right? Nick Saban, known for being kind of an early adopter in college football. And I think he sees where the college football landscape is going and saying, I think Kalen DeBoer is probably the best fit to lead this Alabama program after Nick Saban is retiring. Ryan Williams, a guy that's an elite talent. And I think Kalen DeBoer has a easy pitch to Ryan Williams saying, you can be a guy in this offense. The last guy I want to talk about real quick is Noah Carter, who is a Washington Husky commit. When Kalen DeBoer leaves for Alabama, he gets granted his release from his national letter of intent. This is one of the premier edge rushers in the 2024 class. And he's going to be visiting Tuscaloosa all the way from Arizona this weekend. Another guy that Kalen DeBoer probably in the driver's seat in terms of landing that commitment. You might even see that commitment happen this weekend. And if it does, we'll be back breaking down the commitment. This is going to be a massive weekend for Kalen DeBoer because, again, you look at the narrative, and I'm guilty as charged as kind of talking about this in terms of I don't have any questions about Kalen DeBoer and what he can do from an X's and O standpoint and kind of the schematics of an offense. He is one of, if not the best in the country at designing and running an offense. I think a lot of the questions that you have is, can he compete with guys like Kirby Smart and Hugh Freeze on the recruiting trail, which are valid questions. This weekend can go a long way in kind of answering some of those questions, or at least getting a sneak peek of those answers, right? Landing a guy like Noah Carter or Ryan Williams or Jabar Muhammad or Parker Brailsford out of the transfer portal, that will hopefully put some Alabama fans at ease in terms of it's been a lot of bad news the last couple of days, right? Caden Proctor, Caleb Downs hitting the portal. I think it's time for some good news. I think it's time for Kalen DeBoer to show this Alabama fan base that he can recruit, he can attract talent at this Alabama program. Massive weekend. We'll continue to update you guys as the commitments roll in. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you guys do enjoy the content, enjoy the updates, consider subscribing to the channel. Austin Mack, a massive addition to this Alabama quarterback room. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.